Hey, how's it going guys? This is Dave2D and this is my review of the Asus GL502. So this is their thin and light gaming laptop. We've seen thin and light devices from Asus before, but this is the first one that's had a GTX 970M, a more powerful graphics card. It starts at $1,400. Let's take a look. So the top surface is a black brushed aluminum with the ROG logo, but this time instead of the ultra common red coloring, it's a bright orange. It's not obnoxious or anything because it's only an accent color, but it does have some pop to it, at least more than the red does. Now when you turn the laptop on, the accent lights up as well. The bottom surface is a reinforced plastic with some bright orange feet, and if you remove some screws, you can take a look inside and you'll see 16 gigs of RAM, 8 of which are soldered on, and 8 of which you can upgrade. The base configuration also has a 1 terabyte hard drive, 7200 RPM, it's pretty standard hard drive speeds, but you can always swap it out and there's room for a second drive in there using the M2 PCIe slot. The screen is pretty rigid because of that aluminum panel. The chassis has some flex. It's more noticeable up top above the keyboard, but on the actual keyboard itself and the palm rest area, it's pretty rigid. The hinge tension is good, one hand openable, and the mechanism feels smooth and it's well built. Overall, build quality is good. Fingerprints show a little on the aluminum top surface, but the brush pattern kind of masks it. And then on the plastic inside and the bottom, fingerprints don't show at all. For ports, we have an Ethernet jack, video outputs, 1 USB-C, 3 USB 3s, an SD card, and an audio jack. The USB-C port is not Thunderbolt 3. If we take a look at the back, you can also see the exhaust vents, and the fins of the heatsink are also that bright orange color. On the inside of the laptop, the material has a brushed finish to it. It's plastic, but it looks and feels a lot like the aluminum top surface. The keyboard has that number pad layout, so if you're new to these, you'll need a couple days to get used to the positioning because everything's kind of shifted over to the left, but once you're used to it, it's a good keyboard. 1.6mm travel, red backlighting, orange WASD keys. The trackpad has a nice texture to it. I think it's plastic, but it feels like glass, and since it uses Windows drivers, like native Windows drivers instead of third-party ones, tracking and gestures work really nicely. The button mechanism also works nicely. I had no issues clicking around. The speakers are on the side. They're also bright orange and they look really small, but they get loud and they sound good. I just wish there was more bass. They sound a lot like the GL502 speakers. The screen on this one is a 1080p non-touch IPS panel. It also comes in a 4K option, but this panel is really good. It's pretty bright at 310 nits, matte finish to reduce glare, no significant light bleed, good contrast, good viewing angles, and good color accuracy. It's actually a very solid screen. 720p webcam is okay. The image doesn't look super special or anything. Performance is great. It's a 970M with a Skylake quad-core i7. It's got the same configuration as the new Razer Blade, and it plays games really nicely. Light games will break 60 frames per second even on ultra graphic settings, so something like Street Fighter V, a game which I wish I was so much better at, runs at really good frame rates. They actually use Asus monitors at the big Street Fighter V tournaments. That was kind of cool. Now, moderate titles need reduced graphics settings to keep that frame rate, so something like Overwatch, you'll have to drop it down to high graphics to keep it at over 60 frames. If you want to play at Ultra or Epic, it's going to dip below. And for heavier titles, well, it depends on the game, but you'll have to reduce the graphics quality to hit 60 frames, but it can basically play any modern title with nice looking graphics, and video editing is also no problem on the GL502 because of that second drive slot. Fan noise at idle is quiet, and even under load, it's not as loud as I thought it would be, but the temperatures are a little bit hot. Now, I'm not sure if the reading I'm getting here is higher because of the position of the CPU, like maybe the heatsink is directly underneath the plastic here, because the CPU and GPU temperatures look totally normal when I'm running benchmarks, and there's no CPU throttling, it's just pretty warm in this spot right here. The power adapter is 180 watts. The battery lasts around 3.5 hours of regular use and about 1.5 hours of gaming. Okay, the Asus GL502 starts at $1,400. It has a slim polycarbonate chassis with good build quality. The 1080p panel is pretty color accurate and it's great for gaming and content creation. The backlit keyboard, trackpad, and the speakers are all pretty good. Actually, the trackpad I would call very good because of the native drivers. Inside, the i7 Skylake chip and the GTX 970M are powerful, but the temperatures on load can get pretty hot. The 16 gigs of RAM and both storage locations are easily accessible and upgradable, and then powering this is a 64 watt-hour battery that gets around 3.5 hours of battery life. Now, if you're looking at the GL502, you're probably looking at its competitors, but there are not that many of them. The one that does come to mind is the MSI GS60. So it's also thin and light, and it also has a GTX 970M. How do you choose between the two? The GS60, I think its advantages are a better keyboard, a slightly cooler system, and a thinner chassis. So it's the same length and width, but 4 millimeters thinner. So if that matters to you, get that. If you're looking at the 502, its advantages are a better screen, a quieter system because it runs a little bit warmer, and also a longer battery life. So really you can't go wrong with either of them. I think they're both fantastic. I personally like the GL502 a little bit more. That's the end of this video. Hope you guys liked it. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. It's been nice. See you guys next time.